Hello, world singers. My name is Tyler.
And my name is Brooke.
And this is Cosmere Conversations. Readers, listeners of great stories, it is so wonderful to be back with you. Our time has come. There is only days, months, who counts in what ways. We are getting ready for Stormlight Archive 5, and the schedule is jam-packed. We are here until the release of Wind and Truth, and we hope that you are having a great summer in the Northern Hemisphere and also ready to get after it.
I'm starting to get really excited for the book release. I, try to pace myself, try not to get too excited too soon because there's always a long timeline for these things. But we're at the moment now where I've started my reread. Things are getting released. We're getting sneak peek and things are getting exciting.
Let that excitement flow through you as we are going to be getting off to a fantastically fast start. On our welcome back, we have celebrated both Brooke and my birthday this summer. We hope that you all have been well, but now it's time to put on your study caps. It's time for school in session, specifically Silverlight School. We are going deep. We're going to be reviewing what we think is important leading up to Stormlight Archive 5 over these many coming months, and we hope that you will join us. We hope that you will get excited about Wind and Truth. Maybe share the podcast. Maybe become a patron. You can hang out with us on Discord and have all of the fun conversations going on in the background. But for this episode, Brooke, why don't you set up where we're going? Explain the journey that we are about to be on together.
Well, we've gotten the reveal of the blurb. This blurb is the description, is what it's called, the book description. I believe this is more of a marketing piece of copy that's going to appear on your Amazons, your Barnes & Nobles, your indie bookseller websites in the listing of Wind and Truth as like, here are facts about the book. I don't think this is going to be the same as the book back blurb. I'm pretty sure that's going to be a different thing that has not been revealed yet, but only time will tell.
And you might still get the book back blurb. This marketing summary might not be the final say. So your dreams can still come true.
And as a reminder for all of us, these blurbs, at least up until now, I assume that Wind and Truth is the same as the previous 4. The blurbs are written in world by a sleepless, and they're always incredibly interesting.
We did an episode about the book back blurbs in the past, I think around like high 90s, if you want to go into the back catalog and check that out.
After the book blurb, we're going to talk about some big themes and big questions that we have so far in the entirety of the Stormlight Archive. So as we look forward to this epic conclusion to this season, so to speak, of the Stormlight Archive, we are going to think a little bit, talk a little bit, have some big conversations about the big ideas that are being put forth in this series.
Let's start out by going over the blurb. We're just going to read through it. It's pretty short. We'll, trade off the paragraphs, but it is an interesting question. Is this also written in world? We don't believe so, but to keep trend, the answer has to be yes.
Yeah.
And it would be weird if it wasn't, but it also has some weird mentions that make me question, is it written in world? And that's what I want to talk to you about as we go through. So would you read this with me?
Yeah.
Start off with that first paragraph, go through tell us what's going on. Get us ready for Stormlight Archive 5.
Quote, Dalinar Kholin challenged the evil god Odium to a contest of champions with the future of Rashar on the line. The Knights Radiant have only 10 days to prepare, and the sudden ascension of the crafty and ruthless Taravangian to take Odium's place has thrown everything into disarray. End quote. That's our first paragraph. My initial question is, do our heroes find out that Taravangian has ascended? If so, when do they find that out? How do they find that out? Correct me if I'm wrong, but when we leave off, nobody knows yet. We're all still thinking that Rhaesa is Odium.
I think the only person who could conceivably know would be Szeth, right? Because he does the stabbing with Nightblood.
Yeah.
And Taravangian's there. And so it would be like a guess, I think, of like, oh, yeah, Taravangian must have got sucked up into Odium. So if he had a really good guess.
It's a big leap, yeah.
But he also might have some Nail assistance or some knowledge from Nail that's like passed on to Szeth because he's going to have this weird situation. I would go ask the Herald, hey, this weird thing just happened to me with Nightblood.
I don't know if he's going to have time because at the end of 4... They are being sent on the expedition that they are going to spend presumably a lot of 5 doing. So anyway, just a question here. How and when are we going to find out that Taravangian has ascended to Odium? Or do they? Is this just the commentary from the Sleepless who maybe are all-knowing?
All-knowing, or it's being written like a history or from the perspective of someone who to them these events are history.
Right.
And so they're looking back and then writing it in such a way that it's, building up suspense as a written document in world. But they know the answers. They know that Taravangian had become Odium because it's eventually revealed to everyone. Or this could have not been written in world at all and wasn't intended for anyone except for regular humans in our world.
Interesting thought.
Let's get some more details from the blurb itself. Quote, desperate fighting continues simultaneously worldwide. Adolin in Azamir, Sigil and Venli at the Shattered Plains, and Yasna at Thaylen City. The former assassin, Szeth, must cleanse his homeland of Shinovar from the dark influence of the Unmade. He is accompanied by Kaladin, who faces a new battle helping Szeth fight his own demons, and who must do the same for the insane herald of the almighty Ishar. End quote. Bunch of plot points here, though we knew that Kaladin and Szeth were going to be going to Shinovar. I feel like the clarity about the Unmade, their corrupting influence, is really coming into focus and may be the topic of a future episode of ours. So keep that in mind as we're going to talk more about the Unmade. What are your thoughts on this paragraph? Kind of, spreading around the love, understanding where all of our chess pieces are.
Theoretically, this book is going to help bridge the gap in between what we've seen from Sigil so far and then where we see him in The Sunlit Man. It'll be interesting to see how much that gap is filled in, what we get to see and what is kind of maybe always going to be off screen, or I guess maybe happens in the back half of Stormlight Archive. So I'll certainly be watching Sigil's journey. I am intrigued that he's teaming up with Venli. I think that'll be an interesting little duo to watch on the Shattered Plains, and a good one, with Venli being from there or, having lived there for a long time. Sigil with his scholarly brain, being able to learn a lot from her, perhaps, about,
Definitely.
Parshendi culture.
And perhaps reminding both of them more about their scholarly past or their
oh
mind.
My gosh, I forgot Venli used to be a scholar too.
Oh, of course. Yes. They match up so well together.
Cute.
Yeah. Oh, love affair, maybe.
I like it.
I think you're absolutely right that there is new knowledge about Sigil's future, and that should be on our mind, but I do question how much we are going to see of that story play out. It always could be like the post-Stormlight Archive 5, but pre-SA6 novella could also be filling kind of the ramifications of everything that we see happen in Stormlight Archive 5.
I don't know if there will be a novella in between those, but yeah, maybe. Could be cool. Do you remember, did we already find out that Shin is being plagued by an unmade?
Yes, I do think that is mentioned, but it's done so in like an off-screen or vague way where we don't quite have a solid understanding, but they realize what had happened in Oathbringer at Kolinar and kind of the effects of the unmade through Rhythm of War. So they have word that there is a similar thing going on in Shinovar, and Seth's like, I'm gonna go back and check that out.
Okay.
I think, to me, one of the most heartening aspects, the joyous aspects of this blurb is that Kaladin is not seemingly immediately jumping back into the soldier role or the general role.
Yeah.
And he is helping someone else with their own struggles.
Completely agree. This is totally in line with my dream path for Kaladin, which is for him to retire from war and help other people with mental health struggles. And who has more mental health struggles than Zeth? So I'm really excited to see these two interact. And I'm really hoping that they can help each other, that in each other they will find some solace and support and perhaps some wisdom for how they can each move forward in their own journeys.
Yeah, it's definitely strange because they represent the sides of the coin kind of in books 1 of 2 of hero and villain, and they're playing off the assassin in white and then the bridgeman who becomes a radiant. They are also seemingly unique, maybe, among their orders, with Zeth kind of going against the trend and swearing his ideals to a person rather than to like the book of law. And Kaladin being pulled between these two worlds, the soldier and the surgeon, and having to kind of recognize through great trauma the terrible aspects of the Light Eyes and the justice system and the kind of caste system that they have set up, and he's always like fighting with those things. It's just an interesting juxtaposition that
they do both struggle with the way that their societies are set up.
Exactly.
So obviously Zeth, we don't know his full story yet, but he's obviously got some tension with the Shin society that made him be outcast. And Kaladin, of course, has a large struggle with Light Eyes versus Dark Eyes, poor versus rich type structures that exist in Alethkar.
And what do you think about the last line reminding us all about Ishar, the OG bondsmith, and maybe the person most responsible for current predicament that everybody is in?
I'm curious what we're going to learn if Kaladin is going to be interacting with Ishar in this book. Are we going to get a lot of insight into the heralds? I think that we will get some additional information about the heralds, their circumstance, and sort of how we move forward from here. But because we know the second half of the Stormlight Archive is going to be more focused on the heralds, I think there's going to still be a lot of mysteries to uncover in that second half.
Certainly expecting a lot of mysteries, but I do think that the heralds are answers to some of the deep questions, or the questions about the deep history in Rashar's past that have really been on the table since Dalinar has seen visions of the past, and we're kind of wondering what happened to Honor, what happened to the heralds, what happened to the Radiance, and the kind of like falls at different times for different reasons. They all seem to kind of like need some answers. And Ishar, by understanding Ishar, you could understand a lot about the journey that the heralds were on. And so I think that serves as a nice bookend to us opening with the heralds throwing down their swords. If we got some like send off with the heralds explaining something or kind of learning something that the heralds teach us in the last moments of Stormlight Archive 5.
Let's hear a little bit more about what our other characters are doing. Quote, at the same time, Shallan, Renarin, and R'lain work to unravel the mystery behind the unmade Ba'ato Mishram and her involvement in the enslavement of the Singer race and in the ancient Knights Radiance killing their spren. And Dalinar and Navani seek an edge against Odium's champion that can be found only in the spiritual realm, where memory and possibility combine in chaos. The fate of the entire Cosmere hangs in the balance. End quote.
And then the stakes are turned up to 11, and we are reminded about the consequences of everything that's going to happen these next 10 days. Not for us, we have more than 10 days, but the next 10 days in Rasharan history are going to be foundational for everything that happens in the Cosmere going forward.
With this journey of Shallan, Renarin, and R'lain trying to unravel this mystery about Ba'ato Mishram and the Singers and the Recreants, I'm hoping that while we won't get all of the answers about the Heralds and their full story and what's going on with them, that we will get some closure to this storyline, that the False Desolation and the Recreants will be wrapped up, will be resolved, we'll find out exactly what happened in those circumstances in this first arc, and then there will be the additional mysteries of Honor and the Heralds to continue exploring in the next half of the series.
I like that breakdown. I would, of course, love answers of any type at any level, but I do think that understanding of the False Desolation and the Recreants would really help us connect to that second half of the Stormlight Archive.
Because to be clear, I don't think it will necessarily be a super clean answer either.
Right.
Even if we find out exactly what happened, I think that those answers will spur more questions.
Of course.
You know, that will then lead to plenty of exciting speculation for us in the next decade to come.
Yeah, I could see the chapters that were focused on Shallan, Renarin, and R'lain being kind of consequential. Every time you go to them, you're learning out a new tidbit, and then the chapters that deal with Kaladin and Szeth sometimes branch off to talk about like one thing or one conversation with Ashar, hypothetically. And so you like learn an important tidbit from Ashar that then connects back to the main plot points you're learning from Shallan and Adolin. And so that's kind of how I think the book could be structured. We're certainly going to be seeing lots of the structure of the book. Brandon did a reading from the prologue recently, and as is the trend, Tor will be releasing chapters in the lead up to the December release date.
I believe the entire first part is going to be released as preview chapters.
Right.
As a reminder, we typically do not read those preview chapters prior to the book's release. So this will be a non-spoiler zone for Wind and Truth until after the book has been released to everybody in its full form.
Yeah, it's hashtag all spoilers all the time for everything else, but we keep that little first part that's released early, we keep that spoiler free just in case, because it's not necessarily accessible to everyone in the same way. And we want to really have an event around the release. We do think that's a fun thing for everyone to be a part of.
Okay, but going back to this last paragraph in the blurb, the sentence or the part that absolutely grabbed my attention was this part about Dalinar and Navani, who are seeking answers in the spiritual realm, quote, where memory and possibility combine in chaos, end quote. Holy moly, what a phrase. I think this is the first time that we're really going to see characters interacting with, researching, whatever they're going to be doing. Are they entering the spiritual realm? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I am excited.
And if anyone can do it, it's two bondsmiths.
Yeah.
Right? I think that they're really the first characters that have some ability to interact and question the spiritual realm and kind of like, maybe it's like Shadesmar early on for Shallan. You know, it starts out as chaos. You're just falling into a bed of beads, a sea of beads, and sinking down quickly. But with some understanding, with some lessons, they might be able to establish a foothold of sorts in the spiritual realm. And we don't know how that is going to play out because we really haven't seen anything like it. We've heard of characters like Elend when he supercharges ATM having, a burst of shard-like ability to see the future and kind of like see the possibilities, but that's still access to the spiritual realm. It's not what we believe Dalinar and Navani might be doing, which is really investigating.
Along with this, having Dalinar and Navani working together, one, so cute. I'm so excited to just see them actually like be together, working together, using their strengths together as a cute little couple. But then also as two bondsmiths, what do you think the resonance point of two bondsmiths is?
This is a tough question because I think it gets back to some of the early questions about like what did the Ashen people do wrong to destroy their civilization? What is truly the strength of the bondsmith, like the fully formed and fully focused bondsmith? We've seen them boosting other people's powers. We've seen, Shallan's light weaving ability greatly enhanced when Dalinar is assisting. We've seen the ability to merge three realms and kind of like channel Stormlight. But I think what we need a little bit is Kaladin's exploration of adhesion gave him a lot of skills. We need like them to get some reps and really explore what they are capable of.
Yeah, to oath up.
Yeah, basic. Oath up indeed. Like, do you even lift, bro? And Dalinar is just sitting there all like 6'2", stocky, all muscle. And he's like, yes, I do lift. So I think he's going to have some training montages over the next 10 days,
but with
for
his
the fight.
bondsmith
Exactly.
skills. I love it.
Let us know if you have any thoughts or special things you're pulling out of the blurb, and give us your thoughts if you think that the blurbs are going to continually be written in world, and what you think about the sleepless, because they're always a fun topic of speculation. Until that time, though, I want to transition us to speak about some themes. Some big questions, some broad principles, some philosophies, some would say.
Yeah, I think we are going to get a little philosophical here. Throughout these first 4 books, we often see Hoid or Wit musing about the purpose of art, the role of a storyteller, and these, I think, are fairly transparently ways for Brandon to talk a little bit about things that are on his mind as an artist, as a storyteller, as a writer, and to get a little bit meta about that. And so perhaps one of the themes of at least the first half of this series is, what is the purpose of a storyteller?
Yeah, this question asked by Wit, I think, is one of the fundamental concepts behind why Brandon is writing. Like, he's asking that to himself, and the answers are representing themselves in the Cosmere, in his other works, and all of the projects that he's a part of. But there is this very clear answer that Hoid gives when he says, quote, "The purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think upon," end quote. And that's where I want to go. I want to use this conversation we have in this episode to serve as a foundation, a springboard into all of the other questions and all of the other episodes that we are going to be doing about the Stormlight Archive.
Yeah, and to that point, I think this is very clearly shown in the complexity of the Stormlight Archive. And a lot of times there are not very clear answers immediately sort of spoon-fed to you as a reader. There's not a whole lot of black and white type themes or philosophies in these books. It's kind of all in the gray area, which goes right along with that idea of letting us sort of muse and think for ourselves and getting comfortable existing in the middle and knowing that two truths can be true at the same time. And so we're going to talk about a few of those maybe gray areas
The gray areas certainly are a fun place to play around. They're also a fun place to have some arguments. So as we go forward, there's going to be, a couple of big questions that we think Brandon is working on and that are giving us questions to think upon. And let's start off with the first one, the one that has really struck me on my reread, especially books 1 and 2, but this question of, do windspren create the wind?
You are obsessed with this question.
I've had this with you once or twice off mic.
You're obsessed.
Yeah.
I am not fully convinced that this is as important as you think it is, but please give us the breakdown. Give me the full download on all of your thoughts around this question.
Okay, do you want it all at once, or do you want me to kind of break it up and deliver it in pieces? Oh, perfect. That's why you are here. That's why I am here. Let's go after it. This question of, do windspren create the wind?
And to you, this question is sort of representing a larger question, correct?
Yes, it's not a straightforward question. It's a meta question. It's the question Brandon is asking to himself, to the readers, that is not meant to have an answer necessarily, but meant to give us other questions to ponder.
What is that question?
The secondary one, what's the question that I'm now pondering?
Correct.
Because of this, it is, do honor spren create honor? When we are looking at Kaladin and the story that he and maybe Dalinar represent most cleanly and clearly, it is about this concept of how to be honorable, how to take honorable actions when others are not honorable around you. How does Dalinar react when betrayed by Sadeas, Kaladin by Amaram, and so on and so forth? These questions of honor are supplemented by an honor spren, who at first believes that they are a wind spren. And it is Syl, who is asking this question originally of, do windspren create the wind? So let's go to a quote, a back and forth, if you will.
Okay.
Because I think that the best place to go is the text, and all of these come from The Way of Kings, the very first book. So they're questions that have been there from the very beginning. A lot of these were put together by a user named Meg on the 17th Shard. Thank you so much, Meg. And they did this in 2013. So
oh, wow.
This is all the way back. More than a decade ago, we have been asking this question, do windspren create the wind? But that actually means something else. Here we go. Start off with Syl's quote, please.
Quote, bind spren, Syl said, walking up beside his head. She was still standing in the air.
They're holding the rock in place.
Maybe. Or maybe they're attracted to what you've done in affixing the stone there.
That's not how it works, is it?
Do rotspren create sickness? Syl said idly. Or are they attracted to it?
Everyone knows they cause it.
And do windspren cause the wind? Rainspren cause the rain? Flamespren cause fires?
He hesitated. No, they didn't, did they? End quote. Kaladin asking this question, or Syl and Kaladin having this conversation, him saying rotspren cause sickness. That's something that he's been taught by Lirin. It's something that's like casually mentioned. You gotta stay away from rotspren because it's feared that they cause rot.
Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, this is a very obvious answer to that question of no, windspren do not cause the wind, they're attracted to it. That seems to be what Syl is saying.
Yes, that there is not a causal relationship.
Correct.
But that they are attracted to it.
Okay.
And that attraction to wind or flame or rot is coming because of the people themselves, the people who are experiencing the wound that is rotting or, susceptible to rot.
Or the natural world.
Or the natural world.
The fact that the planet has wind and the planet has rain, etc.
Yeah, quick separation just so that everyone's on the same page. There are the natural spren, or the spren of the natural world, and then there are the higher spren. That's a little bit classist to say, but they are
the radiant spren.
The radiant spren, the spren that developed later from something like a flame spren. I do think that there are clear differences between those, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about those. But yes, flame spren do not cause fire. They're attracted to fire. And the existence of spren reinforces the thing. In Kaladin's mind, there is a relationship between the rot a patient sees and cleaning the wounds, and it causes them to act differently and behave differently. And their behavior, the person's behavior, is able to change the situation outside of them. So internal behavior can affect the external world. And I think that's important, or more important, when it comes to the secondary question of, do honor spren create honor? If we just applied your logic, the answer would be no.
Correct.
Right. Honor spren don't create honor.
They're attracted to
it.
honor.
Let's go to a quote which I think supports more of what you are saying. This is in a flashback scene, chapter 32 from the Way of Kings, when it's talking about Kaladin's first crew in the army. Quote, Kaladin's heart beat faster. Anticipation sprung up around members of the army, but not his team. To their credit, there weren't any fear spren either. Not that they didn't feel fear. They just weren't as panicked as the other bridge crews. So the fear spren went there instead. End quote. Again, an attraction, right? The fear spren go to the people who are most fearful. And I think that this is really getting at an important aspect of what we will see play out in the Way of Kings for Syl and for Kaladin, is that what is honor spren, or what are honor spren doing? What is honor? If we want to go down to like the most fundamental question that we can, is what Syl says here during the betrayal scene. Could you start this and play Syl out from chapter 67?
Quote, Syl stood beside him, facing eastward. It made his very soul twist in knots to see that look of despair on her face. Are windspren attracted to wind? She asked softly. Or do they make it?
I don't know, Kaladin said. Does it matter?
Perhaps not. You see, I've remembered what kind of spren I am.
Is this a time for it, Syl?
I bind things, Kaladin, she said, turning and meeting his eyes. I am honor spren, spirit of oaths, of promises, and of nobility. End quote.
Syl's recognition of who she is, an honor spren that is attracted to honor. But she says this before he's made the decision to be honorable. To Kaladin specifically, he has not decided to go save anyone at this point. But she is with Kaladin. She is strengthened by Kaladin. She is, radiant when she is with Kaladin. And Kaladin is radiant when they are together. And so you get this feedback loop. And so I think this is what is really important, and kind of like my main pitch philosophically with this question, is that the feedback loop ends up creating honorable people who make honorable decisions. And that then reinforces the willingness of the honor spren to be attracted, which makes more honor spren willing to take the risk of binding or being interested in humans in the first place. And seeing that happen, seeing Kaladin be honorable, makes Dalinar more honorable. Seeing Dalinar be honorable makes everyone else more honorable in the war camps, and so on and so forth.
The idea of like attracts like.
Yes, like attract likes, but then the attraction does something about amplification as well. It's more than the sum of its parts. It's not just Kaladin and Dalinar. It is somehow them making these decisions to be honorable, to be good, increases the honor and good that is available for everyone else to take part in. And so it almost is like an Ouroboros where it's eating itself. Still saying, like, are we attracted to honor, or the windspren attracted to win, or do we create it? And the answer is both.
Sure, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think it comes down to, is like there is a both and to this question rather than an either or. And to me, it's very easy to find the technically correct answer. Do windspren cause the wind, create the wind? Someone in Rashar is out there studying the little mechanics, and they're doing, quantum physics, but Rasharan. And there's us, the readers, who are trying to break everything down. But there are so many ways to kind of interpret this and understand everything that's going on. So I think this really simple question is actually far more deep. And I think that happens almost everywhere you look in Brandon's writing, and specifically in the Stormlight Archive.
Nice. I like it. And you think that there's kind of a branch of this theory that is expressed in each of the books so far, correct?
Yes, I think that it's a continuing theme that is recurring throughout, and it's asked in different ways, or it's presented in different ways, maybe from different character perspectives. But we're always coming back to this question of like, where's honor coming from? Why are there honor spren? What is going on here with these radiant? And I do think that you can see this in each of the books in slightly different ways. And so like the first one, the question is presented. Do honor spren create honor, or are they attracted to it? And in book 2, there's this reflection on the question, or kind of like a undercutting the question a little bit. There's a seeming answer to the question, which is honor is dead, but I'll see what I can do. A rejection kind of the premise of the question, a very like teenage answer to
I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, being silly for the most part, but just kind of, a acceptance of just like, it doesn't matter what your silly question about honor spren is. I'm going to put this on my back. I'm responsible. I'm Kaladin. I'm going to go jump in the pit and do what I can do. In book 3, this gets expanded, and maybe the most depth is given when we shift a little bit to Dalinar's perspective. Then we get the famous line of, you cannot have my pain, because there is something honorable about taking responsibility for your actions and accepting that your actions caused pain to others, caused pain to yourself.
Yeah, and that's like the only way that you can move forward to become a better person is to see and acknowledge and feel the wrongs that you have done in the past. And that if you ignore those things, there is no path to become better.
There's no path to become, truly better. You can maybe improve. I would make this argument between Dalinar and Moash, who Dalinar goes to cultivation, Night Watcher, to have his pain taken away. That's what she does. Temporarily, we know. But he does that, and he becomes an immediately better person. He improves his life.
I see.
And he, stops being an alcoholic, treats his children better, matures, even though he's already a very old man. But like, he matures, he becomes better, and eventually gets on the path of the Way of Kings when his pain is taken away by cultivation.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it can be done forever. This was a temporary thing. But when Moash has his pain taken away, his passion taken away by odium, he becomes, a psychopath. He can kill anyone. He feels nothing. He'll go after Kaladin. He'll go after Teft or whatever it is. And he doesn't necessarily become a better version of Moash.
Yeah.
Because he is non-sensitive or been removed from any type of emotion. But Dalinar does. And then Dalinar becomes even better still when that pain is taken on again and fully accepted, and like self-actualization happens for Dalinar. It's a interesting thing. It's why I think that Moash maybe not is on a path for a redemption arc, as many fans believe that he might be. But like, if Dalinar could be a killer and eventually be redeemed, why too cannot Moash, is the general question.
Yeah.
Which I think is fair up front. But that's my answer. Like, why not?
I think Moash is maybe going to like sacrifice himself in a last honorable action.
I could see
type
that
thing.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm not saying there's like no redemption.
Yeah.
But I do think the character arcs are distinctly different.
Or maybe that's going to be Kaladin's arc. He's going to have to kill Moash and be okay with it.
Yeah, it'd be accepting of that pain that he is causing, and kind of like learn what Dalinar had to learn in this long moment. Dalinar had many years of this situation. And then Rhythm of War, we have maybe what is a more true answer, or at least a more hopeful answer to the question, which is honor is not dead so long as he lives in the hearts of men. And I think that this is where things get really philosophical, or we start to get very meta. We start to be talking about these like big ideas a little bit too speculative for maybe some of our most discerning listeners. But I do believe that it is important that kind of men, according to the honor spren, have the source of honor within them. And they can kind of begin to regrow honor, because all you need is like a little bit. You need Kaladin and Syl to have that relationship. And then, like I said, it can have a positive feedback loop to spread to others.
Are you saying that humans can recreate the shard of honor?
Not to that extent. But I think this quote and what the honor spren are recognizing is there's a problem with the relationship that they have decided upon for the last several hundred or 1,000 years since the Recreants. This division between humans and Honor Spren is bad.
Okay.
And is not a great relationship. But 2, that even though Honor the Shard is dead, Honor is not dead.
Right.
Because men have the ability to be honorable, and that creates Honor Spren. That attracts, like, the creation is happening from the willingness to be honorable by a person, especially in a dishonorable situation. And that positive feedback loop is only beneficial.
Now I come back sort of all the way around on this question, though.
Now you hate it? You were like kind of
No.
on the bandwagon, and then now you're off the bandwagon and you're shooting at the bandwagon from afar.
No, I'm just thinking, maybe this doesn't make sense. I was thinking if we're on a world where there is not the Shard of Honor or Spren of Honor or anything
any
like
other
that,
world,
would these people still be capable of being honorable? I think the answer is yes, because we have seen other Shard worlds that have different shards.
It's the feedback loop is enhanced on Rashar. It's boosted. It's like every time you pass go, you collect $200. Every time somebody does an honorable thing on Rashar, they get an extra 200 points compared to everyone else across the Cosmere.
I think it only means that the magic system runs through oaths, aka honor.
Right.
Which is not necessarily the same on other worlds. That's the difference. The difference is that having the Shard of Honor on a planet changes the way that the magic works, not necessarily what attributes are available to the living beings on that planet.
Certainly available, and like the attributes, I think that would be equally available across the entirety of the Cosmere. Every person has the ability to be honorable. It is what happens if you are honorable.
One thing that I think is important to remember is that there's more complexity to the intents of these shards than just the name that we are reading. So I feel like in this whole discussion, you are taking honor to mean something extremely specific and maybe more emotional. And I want us to remember that we just read a little bit ago the quote about how honor is oaths, honor is rules, honor is structure, like the thing that the Shard of Honor, the thing that we have named
how
honor,
they interpret that, yes,
is giving to the world is like Newton's laws, gravity, that kind of thing. So I don't necessarily want to completely buy into this thought that the magic is happening because people are acting honorably. I don't think that that is the full picture. The magic is working because oaths are made and there's this specific structure that is binding, that provides a paradigm for the magic, basically.
But if you behave honorably, what happens in the magic system according to the rules?
But honor is simply defined as obeying the rules.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's not only defined that way because that's the Skybreakers. The Skybreakers are defined that, but they're doing another interpretation down.
Each order has their own rules.
Yes.
So you get magic when you follow the rules of your order.
You get more magic when you follow the rules of your order.
This is the whole thing. Like the Knights Radiant, at least in some circumstances, are going to disagree with each other. Something that a Windspren or a Windrunner thinks is the right thing to do, someone from a different order is going to say, no, that's definitely not the right thing to do.
Or even
the right
the same
thing to
order.
do is this.
Kaladin brings this up with Syl and says she hates when I ask these types of questions. But he says, what happened if one of the Parshendi is a Windrunner? And don't you think their Spren, their honor Spren, is going to say that their battle to defend their homeland is honorable, just as my battle to defend the bridge people is honorable? And Syl doesn't take that question on directly. She backs down in that circumstance. But this is really what I love, because a simple question is actually so deep and so complex because of the world that Brandon has created and the characters that are exploring that world, or we are exploring that world through these characters. So for the listeners, when it comes to Wind and Truth, what do you think is going to be the answer to these questions? Maybe that's as simple as just like, how do you think Kaladin's story is going to resolve? Or if you want to go big, deep, and philosophical, how would you answer the question, do honor spren create honor, or are they attracted to it? Would you like to parlay this conversation into the next one and maybe continue a little bit about what you were hinting at just a moment ago?
Sure. I mean, we're going to stay on the sort of themes of Kaladin, who is certainly the main character of the first half of the Stormlight Archive, and his other main conflict, which is, can you kill to protect? Also known as, what does it mean to be a good person? Basically, is killing always bad? Can it be honorable? To the conversation that we've been having.
Yeah, Lyran's philosophy, or the questions that Lyran brings up and kind of represents so often, the debate that Kaladin is continually having with Lyran, even when Lyran's not around. Ghost Lyran shows up just for Kaladin to have these conversations. Upon the reread, I was actually really saddened by the recognition that Lyran and Hesina lose their children when Lyran starts to behave dishonorably. Kaladin kind of famously calls Lyran the most honorable person that he knows. And so if he's got a superpower, it's most honorable person on Roshar, according to his son. I'm not saying it's a true statement. I'm saying if we recognize Kaladin and just like trust that statement, Lyran was very honorable and had arguably a very good life on Roshar. And then he started behaving dishonorably, and his life became very bad, ending, well, quote unquote, ending with the loss of his sons.
I think this is completely the wrong interpretation of this story. It's really harsh to Lyran. And
I mean, yeah, it's a bummer to Lyran.
I don't think it's accurate to say that he starts behaving dishonorably. I think that this basically falls into the like Les Miserables qualm or question of like, is it bad to steal a loaf of bread if your family needs it? And everything that Lyran does is for his family, is to protect his family, is to try to create a life for them within a system that is oppressive, and there is basically no upward mobility. And I would say, at least through a certain lens, that is honorable. Trying to make a better life for your family is honorable. And he is not doing it by terrible means, I think. There's a little bit of a Robin Hood situation where, you know, he's only stealing from the rich. And not even like an alive rich person. He's stealing from a dead rich person who has literally no need for those spheres. And he is giving them to people who otherwise would have no means to create a life. It would be completely different if, let's say in his profession as a surgeon, he was selling medicine that he knew didn't work to people who were poor, or
to make money. You're saying,
yes, make money.
Yeah.
Like then I would say, yeah, that is dishonorable.
Okay. I hear what you're saying, and I think that you're very generous to Lyran, which is a nice thing
I
to
think
be.
I'm normal to Lyran. There's so much Lyran hate
like
on the internet.
Okay.
And it's just like, come on.
Okay.
He's not.
Don't pick up on that.
He's a completely normal person. He's just as good or bad as all of the rest of us, including Kaladin, everyone who worships Kaladin out there.
Okay, I hear that. I understand that. I have so many filters on my internet browsing that if you're negative, I don't see it. And I just get all of that negativity out before it gets to me.
That's great. Props to you. That's
means,
honorable.
Yeah. I don't know if it's honorable so much as like I wear the thickest rose-colored glasses that I can, and then I just walk around like everyone is so nice all the time. However, I think that you are being kind to Lyran. I think that how I'm defining Lyran's honorable or dishonorable wait, hold on.
Okay.
Is very simply, when did Lyran's behavior change? And it changes around this money, this, alleged money that he was going to be given. And then he does and begins to do many things, which include lying and include fraud and include not taking money from a dead person, but taking money from Laurel, because that's
Who
her family's
has
money.
plenty of money.
I mean,
She's fine.
Every
She doesn't
rich
need that
person's
money.
got plenty of money, of course. Yeah. Robin Hood, I totally hear that. Yes,
Like,
it is a little bit of a Robin Hood situation.
She's not suddenly destitute when her dad dies. I mean,
She's
she
not
kind of is because she's a woman, but that's a whole. It's not because she's poor.
If she had a large amount of money, and that said, the globe of spheres, or whatever the thing that is holding all the spheres, is said to be an insane amount of money. It is not a little bit. It's like all emerald bromes, like to the top. And that is needed because Carbranth is said to be so expensive with their medical training and whatnot. But I'm guessing if Laurel had all that money in her back pocket, she could make different decisions, like not marrying creeping Roshone. But
I
she's
don't think
stuck
it's
in
enough.
a lot of situations that she may not be. And I'm not going to say that she definitely is or definitely is not. But what I am saying is that Liren lived a life where he was giving to everyone around him, and they turned on him. They eventually, treated him poorly. And what did he do? He turned inward. He started to say, I'm going to protect my own. I'm going to get my family out. I'm going to help Kaladin. I'm going to lie, cheat, and steal in order to make that happen.
And if he didn't do any of this, you would still be saying, wow, Liren's such a terrible father. He didn't do anything to help his family.
I'm hearing this is from internet people.
He just let them be eaten up by Roshone. They ended up on the street because Liren wasn't a good enough provider. So it's just like, come on.
I mean, you can't win. Life is short and then you die. That's kind of just like how it goes. I think the journey before the destination. Liren started focusing on the destination. He's like, I just got to get out. I just got to have this money so that we can get to Carbranth and then everything is solved. And he stopped thinking about his neighbors in the same way, stopped thinking about Roshone in the same way, stopped thinking in Roshone in the way that Kaladin would eventually think about Roshone, as a sad, spineless man who is not worth his time, energy, or effort.
Because you don't have the luxury of having that perspective when that person is literally taking away your home, your food, everything.
Yes, under difficult circumstances.
That's so dumb. But
it's the same thing.
It's the fallacy of like, oh, poor people need to be moral. There's this whole connection between morality and being poor. And actually, blessed are they who have nothing. Oh, we're so happy for you, poor people. Actually, you're the lucky ones, we say to them as they live in squalor.
Yeah, of course.
And then you ride away in your fancy carriage and you're like, well, at least they're going to get into heaven. Like, no. No.
I mean, I think I hear your argument. I especially understand your argument as a normal person living in the world that we do, the regular world. But I think that the lessons that we learn from Way of Kings is that it doesn't matter your circumstance. Kaladin's circumstance in Bridge 4 is far worse than anything that was happening to Liren. And Kaladin chose differently than Liren did. Kaladin did not go internally. He had moments, of course, but he mainly is making a decision to strengthen those around him, to bring together those around him, to bind people to something bigger than themselves. Liren started to look internally, and at that moment, it was like the karmic balance of Rashar tipped.
Liren is only thinking about his family. I feel like you think that he's thinking about himself, but he's not. He, just like Kaladin, is thinking about the people around him and how he can fortify them so that they can survive the bridge run of their life, basically. Like, he's thinking about their life circumstances as a bridge run, and he's trying to get them armor, just like Kaladin is. He's trying to teach them skills, just like Kaladin is. He's trying to create better circumstances so that they can survive. And I just think it's way too harsh to say that he deserved to lose both of his children, one of them to death, like one of them permanently, just to be clear, that he deserved that.
Well, I never said
because he stole like $20,000 or whatever.
You're bringing extra energy to the conversation.
No,
I
you're
didn't say
saying this
deserve.
was karma, and like
Karma's not about deserve.
Because he acted dishonorably, his kids left him.
No, it has not. Okay, it's not a deserving question. Let's just take that word out of it entirely. It's not about deserving. Karma's not deserving or not deserving. Although it can be like shorthand that way. People could understand it as like, you do something good, you deserve a reward. No, that's a philosophical fallacy. And what I'm saying when I'm using the word karma is that there is a balance in the universe, and that Liren was, for a very long time, maybe being the most honorable person on Rashar, which should have got him plenty of karma. Like, he should have been, if it was just about deserved, he lived a very long life doing really great work, being a surgeon, all that stuff. But in his own personal life was also good. It wasn't just about being a surgeon. So he's living a very honorable life. It was just about deserving. He would have plenty of good place points that he could spend doing some bad things and lose doing some bad things.
Yeah.
But it's not about that. It's simply that maybe the whole universe is dealing with this karmic energy, and Liren's decision was just enough to be that straw that breaks the camel's back, or the rock that starts the avalanche. And it then requires more effort by people later, more sacrifice by people later, when those little decisions are made by the people earlier on. Liren, or let's just say the past generation, makes decisions which are for their family, are for good, arguably good reasons, whatever. They're making decisions in tough situations, but they're not in balance, at least on this world. And that then requires greater efforts by the next generation, which will be the Radiant generation.
I disagree with that philosophy. I think let's just place the blame where blame is due, which in this case would be on King Elokar for sending
So you're a
Rashon
Moash
to the
truther.
town. Kind of.
Yeah, you think Moash is right.
I don't think that Moash's actions are correct.
But you think his...
But I think it's still important to say, don't blame Liren. You can blame Rashon, and Rashon was only there because Elokar sent him there, or maybe we want to blame Rashon's parents for raising him to be such a bitter old person.
I'm letting go of the idea of blame in this circumstance. And I'm saying that there is an energy of Rashar, a musical energy, if you will, of Rashar. And that can be thrown out of balance, thrown out of tune when everybody's not working in the way that they're supposed to. Or,
who says it's not the way that he's supposed to?
I mean, in this case, honor and cultivation set the rules on this world. I think that, again, another example of a very small question. Liren's philosophy: can you be a soldier? Can you kill to protect? All of those things. But when it's looked at in the context of the Stormlight Archive, they're really deep and interesting philosophical questions.
Yes.
Do you have another one for us? Maybe like the most general aspect of the Stormlight Archive.
I think at least one of them is just, how do we handle trauma or even just hard times? What is our reaction when we inevitably come up against something difficult, something that is maybe out of our control? These circumstances, like Rashon coming to Hearthstone, or being made a slave, maybe you didn't have any control over that, but then what is your response? How do you react to those things?
Yeah. How do you react to it? How do you have that trauma, which is often permanent? The trauma itself scars you, wounds you, and you might have to carry that scar for a long time or permanently. Not all scars heal. Many do, and many can be healed, but some don't. And Kaladin exemplifies that for a long time with the Shash brand on his forehead. But I think, how do you live with that trauma? How do you process your day-to-day trauma? Shallan might be a better way of looking at this because she experiences trauma so young, and then clearly has a defense mechanism of, at first forgetfulness or a purposeful memory wipe, a Men in Black-esque phaser on yourself. But for Shallan, she does it magically with light weaving. And then how that continues to manifest in her life. And the person that she becomes is so defined by these multiple traumas that she experiences and, is experiencing in another way. She's kind of on the processing side now. But I think that how Brandon writes about trauma is incredibly interesting, and how different characters deal and process with trauma, even the same trauma. Kaladin and Moash, two sides of the same coin. Before I said it was Szeth and Kaladin. Now it's Kaladin and Moash, right? They both have dark pasts and dark aspects of their past, maybe justified anger at a imbalanced system, or certainly a system that's not fair when it comes to the light eyes and the dark eyes. But they behave and they choose different actions, even though their traumas are similar in a lot of respects.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any other characters that exemplify, living with trauma, working through trauma?
I mean, all of them.
or is there someone that you are excited to learn more about their trauma and how they are processing and dealing with it?
Well, of course, I think we're all still waiting to see how Shallan's arc is going to resolve. Is she on a path where she wants to incorporate all of her personalities, or do we get to the end of her arc and realize that this is an okay way of processing? I think it could be either one. Like, honestly, at least to the point where she's getting now, where she is starting to acknowledge things and like starting to get into a little bit of a healthier place, especially sharing her truths with other people, with Adolin, etc. It would be okay if she kept her personality, her personas, as long as she is able to move through the world. Like, if that helps her be a better person in the world,
right?
No problem with that.
You're talking about how Vale was dropped off as an alter or another
She was
persona.
absorbed.
Yeah, exactly. And that doesn't necessarily need to happen with Radiant or
Correct.
maybe other alters that are out there
Right.
for Shallan. I think that's very interesting, and certainly would be the difference between like I'm curing my trauma if they're just all absorbed, or all the
Sure.
alters. I think that's another like bad horror movie trope when the person has DID or are dealing with this. It's like, I'm going to kill the alters, or the alters want to kill me, and I'm in this like fight. But no, to recognize that living with it is maybe different than how a lot of other people are behaving in the world, but it's not impossible to be different and behave in the world.
Yeah, and if that coping strategy is the one that, again, works for you and makes you be a good person in the world, then I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I think Adolin's fine with it too. I'd love to more deeply explore some of these philosophical questions, or the way that the Stormlight Archive is philosophical. I remember when The Matrix first came out, everyone got Philosophy 101, in The Matrix.
Course, yeah.
And so everyone became interested. And then there was just a rash of books that were popular movie and philosophy, popular TV show and philosophy. And it was just kind of like exploring these deeper questions. I would love for that to exist for the Stormlight Archive, because people's general thoughts are just so much broader than mine. I had no real concept, but I was looking at Reddit on this question of like themes of the Stormlight Archive, and a user that's now deleted, but I'm just going to pretend that they are user now deleted.
Their username is now deleted.
Yes. They wrote about how, while it's not a popular idea, they think that the Stormlight Archive is an exploration of Buddhism through a Western and fantasy author lens. And they provided a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to go through everything in as much detail as they did, but I did find it very interesting. We were just talking about karma. That's also associated with Hinduism, but Buddhism as well. And then we have this. The societal structure seems to borrow heavily from the caste systems of India. And we've discussed the caste problem, or the hierarchy problem, a lot today. Additionally, there's lots of parallels to the Radiant Orders and the Noble Eightfold Path. In Buddhism, Brahman manifest as three gods on Rashar, the three shards, classified as a creator, a preserver, and a destroyer, which is similar to a cultivation, honor, and odium.
Love it.
That's also similar in Hinduism. Those two are like share histories. So if you're familiar with one, you're a little familiar with the other. Rashar is embattled in an endless cycle of death and rebirth in the desolations. Buddhists believe that that is happening here on
That's
Earth as
interesting.
well. The life that most people live is suffering. Buddhists believe that suffering is like the root cause of everything. And if there was a suffering between the three shards, maybe that caused the whole problem to start. And everyone else is suffering because they are suffering. The book, The Way of Kings, is a collection of stories about the life of a noble person who is writing these down to provide guidance and enlightenment to other people, which is very similar to the story of the Buddha, who starts as a noble person, goes around the kingdom and learns from different people, develops the Eightfold Path from that. And the Knights Radiant symbol actually resembles the Dharma wheel. Dharma wheel has 8, the Knights Radiant have 10, but there is a similarity when it comes to the separate paths representing different paths to virtue or eventually to enlightenment. So like the Eightfold Path, you can specialize in one spoke of the Eightfold Path. Like you could be a radiant in an honor sprint and achieve enlightenment that way.
Yeah.
There are a couple more, but I think one that is very exciting is in Buddhist lore, animals can achieve enlightenment, and you don't necessarily have to go through the human to achieve the highest level of enlightenment. And they think this is a wonderful explanation of Rishadium, that they are animals who achieved enlightenment.
I love that. That's an interesting connection there. I like all of these points quite a bit. I had also never really thought about this. I don't know that there's a lot of evidence that this is a reflection of Buddhism specifically, because a lot of these things are elements that exist in many religions. And I think we can pretty safely say that Brandon is inspired by world religions generally, although he has the most familiarity with his own Christian religion.
Yeah, I think the secondary and maybe the only argument that this user has going for them, user now deleted, has going for them is that Brandon lived for years in South Korea, which is a Buddhist nation. Many of the aspects of the Stormlight Archive do borrow from Indian mythology, but a lot are Korean. And that includes, some of the designs of the Alethi and kind of like a lot of the vibes pull from that era in Brandon's life. Obviously, lots been developed since then, but it is at least interesting that if he's a person who has a strong religious faith and he lived in an area where other people have a totally different, he would study that, he would learn about it, and then he would reinterpret that as his own work in the Stormlight Archive.
Yeah. I just want to touch really quick on the idea of the 3 gods.
Yes, the Trimurti.
Because I always get excited about
3
this
gods
combo.
Okay.
And in this quote, they're describing them as the creator, the destroyer, and the preserver.
Right.
Which I think is an okay way to think about them. The connection that really kind of broke my brain open in terms of our 3 shards is when I read The Inheritance Cycle by N.K. Jemisin. I just recently reread the first book in that cycle.
Really great first book.
It is just such a good comparison for our 3 shards. They also have a 3-god universe, and the destroyer, quote unquote, which I think we would map to odium.
Correct. Yeah, I think so.
In the Inheritance Cycle is not destruction as much as he is chaos.
Right.
And kind of the pure energy that can be used for creation, but it's also just like constant change, which is required. It's necessary. Like, it's not as, I think, blanketly negative as something like destruction.
Would you say that it could be memory and possibility combined into chaos?
Maybe. Yeah, sort of. I think more possibility and chaos. I don't know if they would consider that god in the Inheritance Cycle to encompass memory.
Yeah, I don't want to connect it too much, but I like that idea. It's like chaos. Oh, we know what chaos is. That's a spiritual realm, and that's got some chaos.
Yeah, and I like the idea of Odium, if we kind of combine his name, Odium, and the way he defines himself as passion a little bit more broadly, maybe we blanket that to just say he is emotion, strong emotion, which is kind of chaotic, which is always changing, and which is the sort of spark of impetus of something that is needed to create, to allow for creation. And then in the inheritance cycle, they also have a sort of purely understood creator goddess type thing that maps quite simply onto cultivation as the thing that makes things grow. And then the parallel for honor is more specifically and well defined as order, law, structure. He is very rigid.
Yeah.
And represents light, but also the strength of conviction and like never changing. He is the opposite of the chaos god.
Of course.
And I just think that those adding that little bit of extra color and dimension and mapping it onto our shards is really helpful and helps me think that maybe there's a world in which Odium doesn't need to be destroyed. Maybe there's a world where actually these three shards are perfectly paired and like, can we have a peace treaty? Can we find a way for them to exist together? Because maybe actually they all need each other.
I think that's leaving us with some great thoughts, because I never would have said Odium has to be destroyed because of what we saw on Scadrial with the merging of preservation and ruin into harmony. That's clearly a third path. And I think what you're talking about is actually a fourth path, which would be balance achieved between the two.
Yeah.
And I think in order for that to happen, there needs to be balance. There needs to be the resurrection of honor. You cannot, the reason why everything is breaking is because honor started to break. Why did honor start breaking? I think that's a question we'll leave for another day.
Yeah.
But I believe that in order to get what you're saying, you might not need to kill Odium, but you definitely need to have someone ascend to be honor.
So many interesting questions.
I want to leave us with one more, the final philosophical question that Brandon the storyteller is making me ponder about. It comes back to the good place, as so many things in my life do, and the question that is asked there, what do we owe each other? I think this is, again, fundamental to the Stormlight Archive, asking the reader, what do we owe each other? What does Kaladin owe to Bridge 4? What does he owe to Moash? What does he owe to Amaram and Sadius, and on and on and on?
What does Lirin owe to his family?
Exactly. And what do each of us owe to one another? What are we responsible for? On the flip side, I also think, especially for Kaladin, there's a question of what are we not responsible for?
Yes. Thank you.
But
boundaries, people.
Yeah, of
boundaries.
Course. Those are important and valid, and you should have them, Kaladin, because you're not responsible for everything, right? The answer to what do we owe each other is not every moment of your life until you wear yourself down and die, even though you're like mainlining Stormlight. Calm down, bro. Calm down. He's learning that. He's in the process of learning that. I think he's in a better place after Rhythm of War, of course. But there are so many versions of this. Yasna has a great responsibility. She sees her role as to like save Rashar through her research, but through all of her actions. And why does she feel that that's what she owes to everyone, to a place that, you know, calls her a heretic and kind of like ostracizes her, that did something when she was young that is still very much misunderstood or not understood at all? And why is she answering the question of what do we owe each other with a lifetime of devotion to solving these problems to the best of her abilities? Szeth has a question of, can I give the responsibility that I bear for my actions, for being an assassin, to someone else? I am truthless.
Sure.
I'm giving it to the guy who holds the rock, or I'm giving it to the Shin who cast me out. No, like the people learn on the island that is visited by the Wandersail. The king is not responsible for your actions. The king is dead. Szeth, you are responsible for your actions. I think that's something he's going to learn.
That's still a gray area.
We'll explore that more. But the final question that I want to leave everybody with is, what do we owe each other? What do you think the characters in the Stormlight Archive owe each other? What does Kaladin owe to the people around him? What does Shallan owe? So on and so forth. Pick a character and tell me what you think they owe to the people around them, whether that be on the small scale, the big scale, or the metaphysical scale. With that, we are so excited to be back. We have so much planned for the next couple of months. We hope that you will have a grand old time following us along. If you need even more Cosmere conversations, join us on the Patreon for extra special bonus episodes. You can always do the whole like and subscribe thing. Hit the buttons that you know, leave a review, do the boosting, share us on the reels, whatever it happens to be. Find us, spread the love around. Do you have any closing thoughts for us?
We're really excited to be back, and I can't wait to have more Cosmere conversations as we look forward to Wind and Truth. And until next time, life before death,
Strength before weakness.
journey before destination.